Welcome back, everybody. Okay, in this video we're going to talk a little bit about socket mounting options and cabinet enclosure options. Whether you build your own or buy a pre-manufactured cabinet. Right here in front of you right now is probably the cheapest socket mounting option you could find. 3 sockets will fit nicely on an aluminum bread pan. Just like that. Pick that up at the thrift store. It's a 9 1/4 by 5 1/4 by 2 3/4. Miro says the finest aluminum in the USA. But right there, that's an option. And like I say, you mount them any way you want, but that's usually a triangle arrangement. So when you go to put the parasitics, you can use one center point and go each way with the parasitic to the plates of the tubes. Okay, this would be the air box we're talking about here. Now, with this size of air box comes the next thing. With the fan that I've showed, the little blower, this will supply enough air for up to 3 tubes. And it's at Surplus Center. If you check back my other videos, it's surpluscenter.com, and it's like about $9 plus shipping. This particular one that they're selling is a 48 volt model, and I like this because it'll run off of the bias supply, which is 55 volts. Just need one little resistor in series with the fan, and it'll drop from the bias voltage down to what the fan will run on. The fan will actually run, I think the specs on it are all the way up to 50 volts. It's a 48 volt fan, and it'll run it all the way up to 50. But the neat part is the fan will sit inside. So as you mount this down on a chassis with the open side of the fan down, and this is the output port of the fan here, if you situate your box like so, there's still room inside between the bottom of the sockets and the top of the fan to mount your sockets. No problem. There's plenty of room in there. Now, if you were going to use, get carried away here. Okay, how to make a template. You're going to want to know where to put that hole. So, you would lay the fan down, face down, on a piece of paper, trace around it, then carefully cut that out to the line, and you're going to end up with this. It's going to match the fan. It's going to give you your template. So on your chassis, when you go to put the hole, the air opening, you don't want that opening encroaching into this area here. You don't want to restrict the flow of air. So your hole should be just at least a 1/16 of an inch outside the diameter of that hole. Just like a 1/16 of an inch bigger was fine. And while you had it, you would tape that to the fan. And while you got it down, you run a little pin to the back side to mark your hole centers. So now you have got your template, and if you was to say get one of the bigger chassis, this is the chassis that's about the size, pretty much identical to the one that ICA Manufacturing makes. They make a cabinet. Well, I forgot to get that exact. Oh yeah, I do have it. Okay. It's a C-AC-BS2. And this the floor of that cabinet gives you a chassis to mount stuff on. This particular chassis is one that's just individually available from a company called Bud. And this number that I've got written here is the Bud model number. It's an AC420. And this particular one is 13 by 17 by 3. Okay. 13 deep, 17 wide, 3 inches deep. Okay, now this hole isn't for this project. I just picked this chassis up at a ham swap meet. It was another project, but it serves as a good example of how you would want to place your fan. And they already got the fan, the hole there, but this would be like where you'd want to put your fan, face down. And then if you used, say, this aluminum box to mount your tubes in, you see, now you have your air box. And you can seal this down with some weather stripping or some kind of a real thin rubber seal. And then you would use those little aluminum hold down clamps. I may have to get them out and show it to you. You make them out of angle iron. I think I showed them in the last video. It's the same things you'd want to hold your sockets down with it. And it's the way you cut a piece of angle iron. So you'd want to position this to where you had, let me get the camera over here, where you had a little bit of room off to the side to put those clamps. And you'd want at least 3 on a side, at least one, if not 2 in the back, and then 1 up front. And in 2 places on the side, you would want to drill a hole, take a piece of copper braid, tin it, and make a little strap that goes from the side of the box down to the chassis. That's going to be an RF ground because aluminum oxidizes and doesn't always make a good metal to metal contact. And you want this box grounded solidly to the chassis so there's no RF difference between the air box and the chassis. Well, that's one way of doing that. Now, if you choose to use one of the other products from Bud, I mentioned this before, it was the CU729, and I was wrong on that. That's the steel cabinet, but it was the one I could think of real quick. If you can see that, it's a rectangular box, and it has removable top and bottom panels. And the one you want is the AU1029. It has this footprint right here. It's 5 by 6 by 4 inches tall. And if you notice, if we just slide that right over where that fan would go, right there, and you see the fan takes up the footprint perfectly inside that box and still leaves enough room for the air to come out to go through the tubes. Now, in that box, the covers are held on with 4 screws, one in each corner. Let me get it back here. Okay. Not sure you can see it. You can look this up, by the way, on eBay. If you do the AU-1029, maybe put the word Bud, B-U-D, and then AU1029 and look it up. You can see what this is. And you would place this, in other words, leave the top and bottoms off. You would place it open, lay it down in the box on top of the chassis. You would trace the outline around that. This is going to tell you where you can mount your fan. When you make your fan template, you'd mark it, place it in there, give it room for the screw holes. You might have to trim just a little bit of the inside lip of the box off to accommodate the edges of the fan, but it'll fit. And while you have that box down there, you, from the top, look down through and you'll see the screw holes. Mark out the screw holes, and that'll tell you where to drill the holes in your chassis, and you'll have screws coming up from the bottom that'll mount that box right to the chassis. And then this little divot that I found here, when I made this template, you want the center of that little fan, get it in the light where you can see that. You take that center, and that's where you want to do your center punch, so you know right where to put the hole. And that centers up your hole, and then you can measure out from that and make your round circle. And that'll be where the fan gets its air from under the chassis. This way it can draw cool air up from beneath the chassis. You'd have the box, that cabinet, it would sit on little feet, and it could draw cool air up from underneath through a screened opening in the bottom of it. Okay, that's one way to do it. Another way, I guess you could say. Like I say, this chassis is just an example of how big the inside one of those cabinets are. The cabinet I'm talking about from ICA is the C-AC-BS2, and it's didn't write the dimensions. It's like 13 by 18 by, I think it's 10 inches high, but it's so close to this. I just use this as an example of the landscape you're going to have. The room is pretty much identical from this box to that cabinet. So it's just a demonstration of where you would want to put your fan. Your load and tune controls would go just right up in front. The tune, of course, would be as close as you get to the tubes, so it wants to be the first thing on the right. Next to it can be your load control. This gives you room for your high voltage power supply over here. All this area should be left open for the power supply. And underneath, you would mount, because you still have the same dimensions, I believe it's 3 inches. The subfloor of that cabinet is 3 inches, so you'd have that same distance. And staying away from the tube area, you could mount all of your bias, your key-in supply, and screen supply. All gets built on the underside of the cabinet. The reason for that is you don't want any RF from the plate circuit of the tube to make its way under the chassis. So that's why I say your high voltage should be up on top, because it's concerned with just feeding voltage to the top of the tube anyhow. The other circuits underneath the chassis then are going to be feeding circuits to the screen grid and the control grid. Bias, the screen, filament supply, and everything can be underneath. Okay, now if you want to build your own, this next one I'm going to show you is probably about the least expensive way to build the cabinet, maybe. Depends on if you can get source of aluminum. This was a cabinet I had built for another project, and I think I will build start out with the one tube, and there's plenty of room I can expand. This is going to be the cabinet chassis base. All the parts will be mounted on this piece here. It's so big you can hardly... This thing is basically huge, but there's plenty of room in here. Alright, the next part of that, there is a back to this. Yeah, I can't even get it all on the camera. And this, the front panel. That's what it looks like. Yeah, that'd be about the size you're going to see right there. Now, what holds all this together is really trick. At your building center, I got this stuff from Home Depot, and whatever building center you have close to you. I don't know the names of them all over the states, but here in Oregon we have Home Depot and Diamond Building Center. And this is just stock aluminum angle. You can see the name even on here. It's angle. It's 3/4 by 3/4. The stick was 96 inches long, and this stuff is 1/8 inch. If I can get it in the camera, it's 1/8 inch thick. 3/4 by 3/4 by 1/8 inch. So what happens here, if I get the right pieces aligned, I've got to get this drilled. I'll just assemble it and then we'll come back. But right like so, one piece goes all the way across the chassis, and then there's another one that goes in back of the chassis. Those get screwed down, and then there's holes here, right here. These holes hold it to the face plate and the back plate. And then there's one more thing that goes on there. This is actually upside down. I'm just assembling it so you can see what I'm talking about. The main rail, the part that gives the thing structure, is some, I have to measure this, I think it's 1 by 3. Let's see. Yeah. 1 by 3 by 1/8 inch. I can get that. If you can get it to the camera, can see it. It's so darn long. Anyhow, 1 inch dimension there, 3 inches here. And what this gives you is a foot or a area to mount your bottom cover. So if we flip this over like so, this mounts to there. It would bolt on to the front panel like so. And then this piece of aluminum bolts in like that. Like so. So it takes the shape of about like an H, but both front and back panels mount to this chassis plate the same way. And this holds everything rigid. You can mount everything, all your switches and stuff. Coax connector on the back, like so. There. Output or antenna connector. You can see that hole. And then the antenna, the radio input connector right there. And power cord, fuses. Power cord, fuses right here. Power cord goes in right there. This one was set up for a fan in the middle. That's just going to end up being a screen. I'm going to build this one in I'm actually going to use the, move this out of the way. I will actually use this aluminum box in here. I think that's what I'm going to do. There's plenty of room for it, I think. We'll see how it goes. Okay. So that's an idea. This stuff shouldn't cost too much. I know aluminum's very dear, expensive right now, but maybe this idea here is, if you're not trying to make a beautiful rig, this might be the cheaper way of going, because that cabinet is $129 for that ICA cabinet. And this gives you plenty of room. Like I say, when I do the build, I think I will go ahead and use this chassis. There's plenty of room to work above and below the chassis deck, and it's sturdy enough to handle the transformers and everything. Okay, let me assemble this and I'll be right back. Well, okay, we're back. I got that assembled. Now we're just about running out of room. The camera's even too close, probably. Let you see what we got. Tip it on its side. You can see the under chassis area. See how that all fits in. The little angle irons right here, or aluminum, and then the L angle is on the back side for support. And if you flip it upside down, it's just barely get it in frame. Now you can see this is where your chassis bottom the cover would go, and you could just drill holes, then put your feet. I would suggest, this cabinet's so wide, I would suggest 3 front and 3 on back. The little things they call the gumdrop, little beehive feet. And then, yeah, that's it upside down. Turn it around here. There's the fan hole I was talking about. That'll just get covered up with a piece of perforated metal. And there's where the antenna connector would go. And then under the chassis, or below the chassis level, which is right here, this would be the radio connector. On the front, if I can even get it over in view, just about, there we go. These holes here are for your on-off switches. Power, standby operate, sideband, and high and low range. And the hole that I had cut here was for the power step or output control. It was, I think I had a 6-position switch that I would have 6 choices of power output just by rotating the switch. I may end up doing a variac on this one just to demonstrate how they're could be used. That would give you full control, no steps, clear from about 0 watts to wide open, just continuously variable. Really sweet if you want to build this for a driver. Anyhow, with this chassis cabinet, homemade, I believe if you bought all the parts, the aluminum sheet and everything, if you could find it at your building supply center, I'm sure this would come a lot cheaper than the $129 cabinet. Like I say, the factory made cabinet's going to look real nice if you're going to do a finished product, but on your first amps, I would highly suggest that you try something like this, that if you drill a hole in the wrong place, you're not going to damage $130 worth of aluminum. And it's always easy on this to go back and figure out where you mounted a part, maybe wasn't in the right spot, and then when you get it settled to how you want your parts mounted, then you can go to one of the nice cabinets, and it'll give you an idea ahead of time where your parts are going to need to sit, how much room you're going to need, and space allowances for everything. On here, I've already got these holes drilled, and I'm going to go ahead and use them. This is the plate control. It's going to go here, and load control will go in that hole. I may use this for a meter. We'll just see what I've got around. I'll put a meter in here for it. But yeah, I pretty much decided on. I think the 1-tube build is going to go on this box, and then I can show how that could be modified to add more tubes later on, depending on what power supply I've got. Okay, let's see. Oh, I wanted to cover something else here before we end this. I forgot to mention, on eBay there is a if you look up double-sided copper clad board, you'll find a seller. See if I've written him down here. I think it was MG Products or something like that. Let me see. Where did I put it? Where did I put it? Yeah, here it is. MG Chemicals is the company of the board. It's a 6x6. There's a lot of 2 in the eBay sale. And it's $18.95 with free shipping. So you get 2 6-inch by 6-inch boards. So what I would suggest, that's a good, easy way to make a box. You would take one of those pieces, cut it in half, so you have a 3x6. And you see, if we use these sockets, you got plenty of room to mount them on there like so. Lots of room. Okay, then one of those pieces you're going to cut in half again. That'll give you an end plate on each end. And then in the if you buy 2 of those, let's see. Okay, that was the one. Yeah, right. Okay, so you got one left. If you cut it again, right down the middle, 3x6. Just cut it so you got 6 inches long, 3 inches wide. That'll give you your bottom plate. Or you could just leave that 6x6, and then that'll give yourself some room to solder the edge of the box down, and then it'll give you holes to bolt the thing to the chassis. That would work out. But yeah, that's not too bad. $18.95 and free shipping. Shipping has gotten to be so crazy. There's other things on there, but the 6x6 one is the one I saw that since there's 2 of them, that gives you enough parts. If you cut them in half, you can make your sides and everything. Let's see, I think I had that figured right. Yeah, one 6x6, cut it in half. That gives you one piece here. You cut the other half of that into 2 pieces. That gives you ends. And then the other board is your sides, left and right sides. So you would need to buy one more of those than to make a plate. That's right. Getting ahead of myself there. Yeah. So that gives you a good way to make a box there. What I'm talking about, for if you haven't seen the other video, go back and look. You build it up this way. That's what this one is. This one's 3 inches. And it's not 6 inches long. It's like about, I don't know, what, 4? Let's see. It's 4.5. 3 inches wide by 4.5. And what have I got? This one is 2 3/4 high. So that's how I made mine. It was a little tight, but that's about as small as you'd want to build it. And on this one, the fan had to be mounted out to the side. That's what this square hole was. The fan was simply mounted with that open port and just mounted right up in there. And then a little bead of silicone to seal the air so it don't leak, and it pressurizes the box. Of course, this box here was soldered to another part of the box, and then the end covers were on it. So it was a completely closed little box with the one tube. Okay, let's see what we got next. We'll talk about the various power transformers in the next video, because we're working up to where you're going to need to figure out your high voltage, and that might take a little bit. So I thank you for watching, and if you'd like to contact me, I have schematic sets available. There's 13 schematics. Let me run this zoom up here a little bit. Okay, so you can see that. Yeah, there's 13 schematics in total, and just give me an email, send me an email, and I'll shoot them back to you. They're free. I just need an email address for me to send them to. Okay, thank you for watching, and we'll talk about power supplies and high voltage and the screen supply next in the next video. Thank you, and please hit the like button and vote for the video series.